Merry Christmas one and all! I hope you're all having a jolly old time. Unfortunately, Emma can't be with us today because she's off visiting her sister, but we do have Chrono with us to keep things interesting.
Well, Sister Kate doesn't really like me being around this time of year.
Well, we'll have our own celebration here, Chrono, just the two of us.
Because that doesn't make us sound like we're a couple at all.
So anyway, this Christmas I thought it would be appropriate to take a look at an anime movie that takes place around this time of year.
How Totoro Stole Christmas?
Well, no. That would make an interesting movie though. No, today I thought we'd take a look at the movie from the Haruhi Suzumiya franchise, The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya.
Isn't this just It's a Wonderful Life, except in the Haruhi universe?
Well, yeah, I guess it is, but hey, you can't do Christmas without It's a Wonderful Life.
True enough, I suppose.
Anyway, the movie is pretty good, I have to say. I did enjoy it, though there are some things that did make me scratch my head, but that's par for the course for this franchise at this point. But I'll get into all of that a bit later on. But overall, I did enjoy the movie. The animation is good, the soundtrack's nice, and the voice cast really did bring their A-game. Crispin Freeman in particular I thought was really good in this film. I should probably warn you before we get into the nitty-gritty, I am going to be going into spoilers here, so if you haven't seen the film or aren't familiar with the franchise, I suggest turning away now, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas. Anyway, on to talking about the film. So the film starts out with Kyon waking up on a cold winter's morning complaining about how cold it is. Yeah, seeing as they don't have indoor heating in Japan, I can imagine it does get pretty cold around this time of year. Anyway, Kyon makes his way over to school just like any other day, giving a monologue about how much he hates his life and how much everything is so annoying. Gosh, he really is a miserable twit, isn't he? Then again, given that he does have to put up with Haruhi Suzumiya on a regular basis and all the crap she makes him do, yeah, I think it's enough to make anybody grumpy. Still, you'd think he'd lighten up a bit. Anyway, he monologues about how Christmas is coming up and how Haruhi's probably going to come up with some crazy idea for something for them to do. When he finally gets to the SOS Brigade club room, he turns on the heater he had to go and get in what was perhaps the most boring episode of the first season. Yeah, given what we had to sit through in that episode, or rather I should say lack thereof, you better make the best use out of that heater, Kyon. After this, who should burst through the door but the almighty SOS Brigade leader herself, Haruhi Suzumiya. This is where the opening credits roll, and we see some silhouettes of Haruhi looking like she's having a spasm attack going across the screen. Is this supposed to be how she burns off the seemingly unlimited amounts of excess energy she has before she goes to sleep? Actually, that's probably not too far from the truth. After this, the whole club gathers round and Haruhi asks if anybody is doing anything in the build-up to Christmas. Wow, Haruhi Suzumiya actually giving a crap about what other people are doing. I never thought I'd see the day. Well, at least she's not a totally selfish cow all of the time. Just most of it. Although, conveniently, all of them aren't doing anything. But that's because of her selfish nature and the fact that she could blow up the world if she gets into a bad mood. After this, she announces she wants to hold an SOS Brigade Christmas party and pulls a load of decorations out of a bag. That's something I've always wondered about. Where does Haruhi get all the money to afford the things she buys for the club anyway? Are her family meant to be rich? If that's the case, then why did she bully the computer club chief into giving them a computer for their club? Because she's just naturally mean and a bully? Well, I don't suppose this is the part of the plot I should be poking holes into. Naturally, Kyon makes his usual snide comments about it, and Haruhi proceeds to ask him if he still does anything like this in his house. He explains that he still decorates his younger sister's room because, despite being 11, she still believes in Santa Claus. Wait a minute, what do you mean still? Santa is real, darn it! I've met him! I saved him!
Yeah, we met a time-travelling camel when we did as well.
Imagine how Haruhi would react if she met Jeremy.
Not sure that's a sight I want to imagine.
Anyway, after Kyon explains this about his sister, Haruhi goes into some crazy spiel about how it's important to have a pure dream and a pure desire to keep that dream alive and to achieve it. Yeah, that's great and all, Haruhi, but that has nothing to do with what Kyon was talking about. Does Haruhi only drift in and out of conversations, only hearing what she wants to? Actually, that's probably true now that I think about it. Besides, Haruhi, you're the last person who should comment on keeping things pure in order to achieve your dreams, considering what you've done in order to achieve yours. After this, Haruhi reveals that she's got yet another new costume for Mikuru to wear. Surprise, surprise. So, Kyon and Koizumi wait outside while she changes. Well, I say changes, but what I really mean is that they wait outside while Haruhi forcibly strips her and forces her to put on the costume, all the while inappropriately grabbing her. Yeah, you see what I mean about her being a bully? While they're outside, Kyon and Koizumi talk about the closed space that Haruhi creates whenever she's in a mood. Koizumi mentions that there's actually been considerably less of them as of late because Haruhi's been in a much better mood. However, they do still get the occasional one. The occasional one? How often does that happen? Like, once a month? Because if that's the case, I can make a pretty educated guess as to why that is.
I thought you were above making such vulgar jokes, Kay.
Anyway, after Haruhi's finished molesting and forcing Mikuru to change, she announces it's okay for them to come back in, and she opens the door. Which Kyon was actually leaning against, and this causes him to fall back and catch a glimpse of Mikuru's skirt. To which Haruhi starts complaining at him for looking at Mikuru's panties like some kind of pervert. Haruhi, you grope and molest Mikuru on a regular basis. You have no right to criticise anyone, you hypocrite. Well, in any case, Kyon claims he didn't see anything. Yeah, right. And he and Koizumi admire the tiny Santa Claus outfit. Or is it meant to be Mrs. Claus? Because, dressed like that, you're gonna get Santa thinking thoughts that Santa shouldn't think. Oh, by the way, this is a small thing, but it's something I think is worth commenting on. Haruhi sprays the shortening of Merry Christmas, Merry Xmas, in English on the club's window, but the way she does the apostrophe in between the X and the mus, it makes it look like she sprayed Merry X to the power of 9 mus. It's a small thing, but it's something that I found amusing. The next day starts out just like the previous one. During their gym class, Kyon's friend Taniguchi starts bragging about how he's got a date with this girl from this really posh, fancy, all-girls school. Wait, I'm sorry, what? To go out with that guy, you'd have to have some serious brain damage or something. Listen, girl, if you're setting Taniguchi up just to humiliate him, well, that's perfectly alright with me. Anyway, after this, we see the SOS Brigade setting up the Christmas decorations in their club room. Kyon notices they've run out of tinsel and Haruhi orders him to go buy some more. So he picks them up, but seeing as it's late, he decides to take it home with him, ready to bring to school with him the next day. This is where everything changes, though. Kyon gets up and goes to school the next day, but something isn't quite right. Suddenly, Taniguchi has a really bad cold that he didn't have the previous day. When Kyon asks him if this is going to affect the date he was bragging about, Taniguchi has no idea what he's talking about. Although puzzled, Kyon just writes this off as Taniguchi getting dumped and wanting to act cool about it. When he gets up to his classroom, he notices that half of his class are missing, all apparently sick with the same cold. Also mysteriously absent is Haruhi Suzumiya. At lunchtime, Kyon's other friend Kunikida comes to have lunch with him, sitting where Haruhi normally sits. He explains that this cold has apparently been going around since the start of the month, and that Taniguchi has apparently been sick all week. Another oddity occurring in this world. However, the biggest surprise would come next, when Kyon would get the fright of his life. Who should come into their classroom late, claiming she hasn't been feeling well? Somebody who he had thought was long since gone. Somebody he had hoped to never see again. Somebody who the mere sight of sends a chill through his very soul. It's none other than Bridget Hoffman! Dun dun dun!
Don't you mean Ryoko Asakura?
No, she's voiced by Bridget Hoffman and sounds like every other character Bridget Hoffman voices. Therefore, she's Bridget Hoffman. But how is this possible? We thought you were gone for good, Hoffman. Nagato sorted that after you tried to kill Kyon. How is it that you're back, Hoffman? How is it that you keep getting work? Anyway, Kyon confronts her about what's happened between them in the past, but Hoffman has no idea what he's talking about. He then mentions Haruhi Suzumiya to her, but she has no idea whom he's talking about. He then mentions her to Kunikida, but he also has no idea whom he's talking about. They both claim that Hoffman has been the one to sit behind Kyon this whole time, not Haruhi. He then checks the class rota and finds that Haruhi's name is nowhere on it. He then starts flipping out and questioning the whole class as to whether they remember Haruhi Suzumiya, or that Bridget Hoffman, as far as they knew, had transferred out of there. Nobody recalls at all. And everybody looks at Kyon as if he's crazy. Yeah, Kyon, if you keep this up, you're going to be thrown into a mental institution. He then begins to flip out even more and starts running through the hallways of their school. When he comes across where Koizumi's classroom is meant to be, he notices that the class no longer exists, further adding to the confusion. After class is over, he runs into Mikuru and Surya, but neither one of them remember who he is. He tries to remind Mikuru about their past together by telling her he knows about the star-shaped mole on her breast, and asking if he can see it. Alright, Kyon, I know you're having a freak out right now, but surely even you realise that saying that is going to make you look like a complete and total pervert and just freak the two of them out. At this, Mikuru naturally gets really afraid and proceeds to punch Kyon on the cheek. Hey, I like this new version of Mikuru. She finally stands up for herself. Surya then gives him the warning that if he ever comes near the two of them again, she's going to make him sorry. I'd take that warning seriously if I were you, Kyon. If the light reflects off of that forehead, you're going to go blind for sure.
Kate, you of all people shouldn't comment on people having big foreheads.
Yeah, that's true. My forehead is pretty big as well. Anyway, after this, Kyon tries the only other place he can hope to get answers. The SOS Brigade club room. However, when he gets there, he finds Nagato by herself and all the SOS Brigade stuff is gone. Alright, Kyon, surely you realise what's going to happen here based on what happened with everybody else up to this point, don't you? Heck, the fact that Nagato actually made a facial expression when you walked in should have been a dead giveaway. When even Nagato claims to not know what he's talking about, Kyon really begins to freak out, and then proceeds to grab Nagato and start shaking her in fear and backing her against a wall. Kyon, you're going down the right path to get yourself arrested. One of the things he asks her is if she remembers when they had to repeat the same 2 weeks 15,000 times. Kyon, I think we're all trying to forget about that terrible story arc. Man, Endless 8 was stupid. After realising how much he's frightening Nagato, he backs off and sits down to contemplate his thoughts. He notices a computer sitting in the club room. However, it's a completely different model to the one Haruhi stole back in Season 1. He asks if he can use it, hoping to find some sort of semblance of the old world on it. When Nagato switches it on, it's revealed to be an old Windows 95 model. Can you still even get those anymore? She asks Kyon to wait a little bit while it boots up, and Kyon wonders if this is because there's some files she wants to hide from him. No, Kyon, it's because Windows 95 takes forever to boot up. After looking through the computer, Kyon finds no trace of the SOS Brigade anywhere. This causes him to give up hope, and he begins to leave. However, as he does, Nagato stops him and hands him an application form for joining the literary club. Kyon then heads home to find his little sister playing with Shamisen the cat in his room. He asks her if she can remember how they got Shamisen, and she claims it was given to them by an old friend before they moved away. He then questions her if she remembers any of the SOS Brigade activities that she was involved in, but she knows about as much as everybody else up to this point. He then asks her if she can leave so he can talk to Shamisen. His sister then goes downstairs to tell their mother that Kyon's gone insane. Yeah, his sister is the only one with some common sense at this point. I mean, yeah, from Kyon's perspective everything appears to be different, but from everybody else's perspective it just would seem like he's gone insane, and she's the only one who seems to be commenting on it. Kyon then tries to talk to Shamisen, but it goes about as well as you'd expect. Wait, I thought Shamisen was no longer able to talk anyway. I thought that after Kyon made Haruhi put that disclaimer at the end of their movie, everything just went back to normal. So, even in your world, Shamisen shouldn't be able to talk anymore, Kyon. So Kyon makes his way back to school the next day and just accepts that things are still out of whack. Wait, why are you considering this a bad thing, Kyon? You're the one who's always complaining about the way things used to be. You were the one complaining that you just wanted a normal life, and now that you've got it, you're still complaining? You're just one of those people, aren't you, Kyon? You're just somebody who loves to complain. Somebody who isn't happy unless they're miserable. Anyway, out of habit, he goes back to the literary club room to find Nagato sitting there in her normal spot. He notices a book sitting on the bookshelf that old Nagato had previously given to him, so he then proceeds to look through it, seeing if it can give him any clue as to what's going on again. Sure enough, when he looks through it, he finds a note from the old Nagato telling him that if he wants to reset things back to the way they were, he needs to find some kind of keys within 2 days. However, this is a very cryptic message. I mean, seriously, does nobody ever give a straight answer as to what needs to happen in this series? I know it's meant to make everything more interesting for the viewers and to add an air of mystery about it, but it just gets annoying after a while. After thumbing through all the other books on the shelf and finding that there are no other clues from the old Nagato, he then decides to give up and go home again. New Nagato actually reveals that she's been wanting to leave this whole time but was having to wait for him to do so before she could. So Kyon then decides to walk her home, trying desperately to make some small talk with her. Although this is actually quite a bit easier than it was with the old Nagato. When they do finally get there, new Nagato asks him if he wants to come up to her flat. Well then, Kyon, I do say things are starting to look up for you in this new world, my boy. Seems like you might need to get your business socks ready. So they go up to Nagato's place and she makes him some tea. That's all part of it, that's foreplay. And foreplay is very important in love making.
Kay, Yuki's a good girl. I don't think that's what she was asking him up there to do.
She then explains to him how the two of them actually met in this new world. It's very similar to the situation when they went to the library back in season 1, however there are some significant differences. The most noticeable being that there was no Haruhi involved. After this, Bridget Hoffman comes around, apparently having prepared a meal for Nagato. Naturally, Kyon tries to leave, but not wanting to be around Hoffman, new Nagato grabs his sleeve, hoping that he'll stay. So he stays for a meal with the two former aliens and then proceeds to make his way back home. When they're on the lift back down, Hoffman asks him if he has a crush on Nagato, and says that if he ever hurts her, she's going to be very angry with him. Yeah, I don't think in any reality you want to have Bridget Hoffman mad at you. The next day at school, Taniguchi has finally returned to their class, and Kunakita asks Kyon if he's still wondering about a girl named Haruhi. To Kyon's shock, it's revealed that Taniguchi still remembers Haruhi because the two of them went to the same middle school. At this revelation, Kyon begins having a major flip out and begins demanding that Taniguchi reveal to him where Haruhi is now. He reveals to him that she now attends that all-girls school that was mentioned at the beginning of the film, although in this reality it's just a regular mixed school. Kyon rushes over there, but naturally arrives too early, so he has to wait. And we have to listen to more of his droning monologue. Again, Kyon, why are you so desperate to meet Haruhi again? She's been the source of all your misfortune. Even you yourself admit to this. You complain about how much you hate her all the time. Why do you want to put yourself through this again? You remember Haruhi, don't you? The bipolar, insane, obnoxious, spoiled, selfish bully that she was. You remember all of that, don't you? You really are only happy when you're miserable, aren't you? Anyway, Haruhi then comes out of the school accompanied by Koizumi. Her hair is actually even longer than before, and she's got that same miserable scowl she used to carry around all the time at the beginning of the series. When Kyon goes up to them and asks them if they remember him, well, you can probably guess what happens at this point. Thinking him to be just some kind of creepy stalker, Haruhi then proceeds to deal with this situation the only way she knows how. By kicking him. Yep, same old Haruhi. Not wanting the two of them to leave, Kyon then reveals that he knows what happened 3 years prior when Haruhi wrote graffiti and what it said. Again thinking him to be a stalker, Haruhi headbutts him. Oh, you're so elegant, Haruhi. When she asks him what his name is, he gives her the same name he gave to her when he travelled back through time and helped her with her graffiti project. John Smith. At this, Haruhi collapses from being overwhelmed with emotion. Well, it seems all of that history was still left intact. A little while later in a cafe, Kyon reveals to Haruhi and Koizumi that he comes from a different world wherein they have supernatural powers. Of course, Haruhi instantly believes him and goes back to her old crazy self, claiming that she wants so desperately for that world to become real again. When Kyon points out that the old version of her never believed him, the new Haruhi then says that that version of her must be an idiot. Wow, Haruhi. Even an alternate version of yourself thinks you're an idiot. What does that tell you? Actually, all in all, this new version of Haruhi is actually a lot nicer than the one we've been following through the series. It's actually more understandable why Koizumi fell in love with her in this case, which he's more open about in this world. Anyway, Haruhi says she wants to meet Nagato and Mikuru and see the SOS Brigade clubroom, so the three of them sneak back into North High. After grabbing Mikuru, in a forcible way, but actually pretty tame compared to the way Haruhi normally does it. Again, this version of Haruhi is much nicer. Anyway, after that they proceed over to the literary club and find Nagato there. After gathering everybody there, new Haruhi reveals that she didn't actually have a thought out plan for this at all. It's just typical of Haruhi, I guess. However, at this point, the Windows 95 computer turns on and Kyon gets a message from the old Nagato that reveals that the keys she mentioned in her notes were in fact the members of the SOS Brigade. To activate the reset program, Kyon only needs to hit the enter key. But if he wants the world to stay like this, he needs to press any other key. Okay, Kyon, seriously think about this for a second. In this new world, Haruhi's actually a lot nicer, and she doesn't have her powers, so you won't have to worry about keeping her in a good mood 24/7. Nagato is easier to understand and is ready to get intimate with you at the drop of a hat. You won't need to protect Mikuru from Haruhi's wrath here. On top of all that, Bridget Hoffman doesn't seem to be trying to kill you. Honestly, Kyon, it seems to me that you're actually better off here. But naturally he presses the enter key.
I guess he's just a glutton for punishment.
However, doing this doesn't take him back to his own time. Oh no, it takes him back to 3 years prior, where he had previously helped Haruhi with her graffiti message. He figures there's only one person who can help him, the adult version of Mikuru that came and vanished when he and her younger self previously came here. So after finding himself and Mikuru from the past, or in this case the future, this time travel stuff is confusing. Where's the doctor when you need him? Anyway, he hides himself and waits for the adult Mikuru Asahina to come out. After explaining the situation, she reveals that she's completely aware of what's going on, and that's why she came back to this point in the first place. Ah, very clever there. I always wondered why she showed up at that point in Season 2. She also reveals that it wasn't, in fact, Haruhi who changed things this time. The two of them then make their way over to Nagato's flat. Oh gosh, this was a big night for Nagato. She got not one, but 2 visits from Kyon and Mikuru from the future. Kyon then gives her the note that her future self had given to him in the alternate reality, and she once again tries to sync up with her future self, but is unable to do it this time. She then reveals, through her usual complicated exposition, that somebody who was aware of Haruhi's ability to manipulate the world around her in fact stole her powers and used them to create the world that Kyon has just come from. I just love how in science fiction you can make absolutely anything make sense, just as long as you give it a long and complicated enough explanation that uses enough big words so that the audience won't question it. It happens all the time in this genre. Anyway, she gives them a vaccination program that, once injected into the one who stole Haruhi's powers, will revert the world back to normal again, and gives them the exact date and time that that person will do so. When Kyon asks her who did all of this, she gives him a name, which the audience doesn't hear, but brings a look of shock to his face. Kyon and adult Mikuru then travel forward in time to the date that everything changed, arriving a couple of minutes before the person who did it would make their changes. After waiting for a while, the person finally shows up, and there's a big dramatic build-up to it. But anyone with more than half a brain cell can see that this silhouetted figure is in fact Yuki Nagato! Dun dun dun! Yes, it was Nagato who stole Haruhi's powers and changed everything. But why? Well, it turns out that her past self revealed that her future self... time travel. Suddenly became corrupted with a bug, and that affected her best judgment, causing her to do what she did. However, Kyon knows what the real reason is. It's not that she was corrupted, it's that she was experiencing emotion. She'd grown tired of having to deal with Haruhi's antics. She'd gotten tired of being the one who always had to come to the rescue. She'd grown tired of everyone taking her for granted. Hey, after having to experience Endless 8 as much as she did, I can't actually blame her. You think having to experience the same thing over and over again 8 times is annoying. Try over 15,000 times. Man, Endless 8 was stupid. Honestly, I can't say I completely disagree with what Nagato did, and I already explained that the world she created was actually much better. Anyway, Kyon realises that the only reason he can remember anything is because Nagato intentionally left his memory intact so that he can decide how the world should be, because she knew she wasn't thinking straight. So now, the fate of the world rests in his hands. However, before we proceed any further, this is where my first problem with the plot comes in. I'll admit this is a common problem with time travel stories, but there's a paradox at work here. If Nagato was aware of her oncoming corruption, couldn't she have taken steps in order to prevent such a thing from happening? Also, if she's given Kyon the means to stop her and change the world back, well then wouldn't her corrupted self try and stop him from doing so? Surely she knew that Kyon and adult Mikuru were going to be here at this exact point in time, so couldn't she have taken steps to try and stop them from stopping her? Though I did just make the point that she herself was aware that she wasn't thinking straight and probably wanted Kyon to stop her, but if that's the case, why didn't she just try and stop herself? Also, given what happens next, a whole bunch of new plot holes and paradoxes come up. But these are commonplace for a time travel story, so I won't bother going into details about them. Alright, so when Kyon finally realises Nagato's given him the choice as to what should happen, he begins debating with his subconscious about what he should do. Even his subconscious is commenting on the way he always complains about everything and how much he hates Haruhi Suzumiya. So he asks himself, if he complains so much, is any of this actually fun? His answer is yes. Yes, even though this can be a hassle a lot of the time, it's the most fun he's ever had in his life. He loves being a member of the SOS Brigade. He loves every moment of it with the other members, even Haruhi. At one point he says, even though Haruhi can be borderline obnoxious, he still wants to be part of her plans. And all I could think at that point was, what do you mean borderline? Haruhi is obnoxious! So, Kyon has pretty much just admitted that he's only happy when he's miserable. So, he prepares to inject Nagato with the vaccination program. But then, he's suddenly stabbed in the back by Bridget Hoffman. Whoa. Didn't see that one coming. Bridget Hoffman reveals that in this new world, Nagato actually created her as a means to protect herself. In essence, she's the manifestation of all of Nagato's negative feelings. No matter where you go, Bridget Hoffman is always a psychopath.
I really hope the real Bridget Hoffman doesn't hear you talking like this.
Was it really a good idea to bring her back, Nagato? Anyway, Kyon starts bleeding to death and losing consciousness. When Bridget Hoffman goes in to make the kill, she's suddenly stopped by Nagato. As Kyon begins to fade, he sees adult Mikuru. And young Mikuru. Standing over him, begging him not to die. He also sees another version of himself saying that it hurt for him too, but that he's gonna set things right. Wait, if younger Mikuru was there as well, that means older Mikuru knew that this stabbing was going to happen, so why didn't she try and prevent? Time travel! Kyon suddenly wakes up in a hospital bed, not clearly remembering what he'd just experienced. He sees Koizumi sitting nearby carving apples. Koizumi, have you actually done anything in this movie? Okay, the alternate version of you presented the possibilities of how Kyon came to be in this new world, but even Haruhi could have come up with those theories. Other than that, I don't think Koizumi's actually done anything in this movie. You could have seriously done the whole thing without him. You wouldn't even have to change any lines of dialogue. About the most he does is bring Kyon up to speed as to why he's in the hospital in this timeline. The original timeline. Apparently some mysterious person pushed him down the stairs, causing him to lose consciousness for 3 days. In this timeline, he wasn't stabbed at all. During these 3 days, the SOS Brigade members have been taking shifts in watching over him. Come to think of it, why does he need to be in the hospital in this timeline? I know he was stabbed in the other timeline, but that never occurred in this one, so why did he need to be knocked unconscious and sent to the hospital? Was it meant to be a means for him to sync up with when he came back to this timeline? I don't know. It's time travel, alright? Just roll with it. Anyway, Koizumi then reveals to him that there is one person who hasn't left his side these entire 3 days. Haruhi Suzumiya. Apparently, she's been the most worried about him this entire time. Heh. Haruhi Suzumiya actually caring for another living being. Well, I guess there's still a shred of decency left in her, even if it is just because she wants his junk. Koizumi admits that he's rather jealous of this. Even in this timeline, he's still crazy about her. Wait! If Haruhi's been by his side these entire 3 days, does that mean she also hasn't bathed in 3 days? That's kinda gross. I don't know, maybe her powers mean that she can stay constantly clean or something? Anyway, when she does finally wake up and realises that Kyon's now awake, she's naturally embarrassed that she actually showed human compassion for a change, and goes into her usual spiel about how Kyon shouldn't have worried everybody so much and how he's going to pay the SOS Brigade back. The next day, after being tended to by doctors, Kyon then meets with Nagato to discuss all that's occurred. Nagato says that because of what she did, the data integration thought entity is contemplating how she should be punished for letting herself become corrupt. Kyon then tells her to tell the entity that if it does anything to her, he's going to reveal to Haruhi that he is in fact John Smith that she met 3 years ago, and tell her the truth about everything and force her to change the world again. Okay, Kyon's just realised that he has the ability to manipulate someone who has the power of a god at their hands. I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or not for him to realise he has this kind of power. It's kind of terrifying in a way. But anyway, Nagato sends this message to the entity and it decides not to punish her in the end. After this, everything is back to normal in their school. Although Kyon does realise that at some point he's going to have to go back in time and save himself and reset the world. When you think about it, this whole thing with him having to go back yet a third time kind of screws with everything a bit, but you know what, with time travel, the more you think about it, the more it hurts the head. Anyway, Kyon asks if the world can just wait a little bit longer so he can go and enjoy the SOS Brigade Christmas party. The end. Until after the credits have finished rolling and we see Nagato sitting in the local library watching two children apply for a library card and pondering about what could have been. It's kind of weird and unneeded, but whatever. Despite the time travel plot holes I can point out, and the fact that Koizumi did basically nothing in this film, I still enjoyed it. Yeah, it's the whole It's a Wonderful Life story essentially, but it's still enjoyable. Though, if you want me to buy that Kyon realised how good he had it back in his old world, don't send him into one that was actually better than the one he came from. It just makes him look like a guy who enjoys being miserable.
He makes Cloud look like a breath of fresh air.
Well, in any case, it's an enjoyable movie. I did like it in the end. Anyway, I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Are we ever gonna fight?
I just want to state for the record, this is the worst Christmas hat ever. I've been constantly having to readjust it this whole video.
How Totoro style
Well, no. That would make an interesting movie, though. No, today I thought we'd look at the movie from the... Anyway, the movie is pretty good, I have to say. I did enjoy it. However, there were some things that did make me blah blah blah. But overall, I did enjoy the movie. The animation was good, the soundtrack is nice, something else. Anyway, Kyon makes his way over to his school... Anyway, Kyon makes his way over to his school... Anyway, Kyon makes his way over to school... I can't get this. Then again, given that he has to put up with Haruhi Suzumiya on a regular basis, and all the crap she... Yeah, given what we had to sit through in that episode, or rather lack thereof, you better make the best use out of the... Oh gosh. This is the point where the opening credits roll and we see... Is this supposed to be how she burns off the seemingly... After this, the whole club gathers together and Haruhi asks around to see if anybody's doing anything over... Wow. Haruhi Suzumiya actually giving a crap about what... That's something I've always wondered about. Where does Haruhi get all the money to buy the thing Anyway, after explaining this about his sister, Haruhi goes into some crazy spiel about having to have a pure heart. Besides, Haruhi, you're the last person who should talk about keeping a dream pure, considering what you've done to... Koizumi mentions that there's actually been considerable... Anyway, after Haruhi's finished molesting... I'm becoming a hypello again. Anyway, after Haruhi's finished I can't speak today. Anyway, after Haruhi's finished molesting and forcing Mikuru to change, Oh, by the way, this is a small thing, but it's something I think is worth commenting on. Haruhi sprays the shortening of Merry Christmas, Merry Xmas, onto the club window in English, but the way that she does it, onto the club window in English, so he picks them up, but seeing as it's late, he decides to take it home with him and put another oddity occurs. Somebody who the mere sight of sends a complete after looking for the computer. Kyon then heads home to find his little sister. Wait, why are you considering this a bad thing, Kyon? You're the one who's always complaining about something. Anyway, out of habit, he goes back to the... Ow. Bit my tongue. He notices a book that old Nagato had previously given to him sitting on the bookshelf. And so he proceeds to look through it, seeing as... Not wanting the two of them to leave, Kyon then reveals that he knows all about what happened 3 years prior, when Haruhi wrote graffiti on the grounds of her middle school, and... He figures there's only one person here who can help him. The adult version of Mikuru that was... He figures there's only one person who can help him. The adult version of Mikuru that... Ah, that's very clever there. I always wondered why she... But why? Well, it's revealed that the park...